I'm about to talk about one of the most important guys to the American industry. America's largest exports are films, and it might not be so successful without the help of one man who laid down the brick for the road of fantasy films. George Melies was the first person to think of using an unrealistic place as a set, such as A Trip to the Moon. But today, we use unpractical or fantasy locations all of the time in films, such as X-Men or Batman. I want to show you just how we got from this to this. It took decades of finding new trickeries and refining them throughout time to get to the CGI that we have today. But it all started with a man whose life passion wasn't even in film, but in trickery. To give more background and credit to Melies, I want to say that he was a Frenchman that started his career in film as quite the driven entrepreneur and continued to be as he directed over 500 films between 1896 and 1913. In the beginning, his films were all about tricks and nothing more, nothing less. They were short skits simply to portray tricks of disappearing and reappearing images or changing of size and places. But as he continued, he decided to use these tricks in a much broader narrative, becoming the first man to change shots to form one scene, and to change scenes to create one movie, which in and of itself changed the lengths of films forever. Movies went from being very short to hourly length films like we have today. He also founded the theory of stop motion, but really by accident. It's said that his camera jammed, and when developed, objects just magically disappeared and reappeared where the camera stopped and began filming again. Now, there are many different forms of art that come from just this one technique, such as clay animation, time-lapse, puppet animation, and pixelation. And the tricks don't just stop there. I know you're thinking this guy has done too much for one man in history already, but he also is responsible for what we call double exposition. He forged the first double exposure in La Caverne Maudite. This was the first major step in special effects, and Melies continued to play with similar ideas, pushing the limits of his knowledge like always. In Cendrillon, he gives us the first dissolve, which today is such an easy transition, but then was a major theme. Today, I believe Melies would be so proud to see the CGI we have and how advanced we are in tricking people. Looking at all the science fiction films over the past 10 decades is amazing, like the 1920s and 30s with the classic King Kong, the 40s and 50s with Destination Moon and The War of Worlds, to the 60s with the famous Planet of the Apes. See how each one of these films has contributed to all over difference that filmmakers collectively are striving to make over the years to improve the realism of science fiction? In the 70s, Star Wars came blazing out of the box office, and lovers of this movie rewatch it all of the time, never complaining of bad effects. Now, for the newer Star Wars, are more digitally advanced, no one can take for granted those foundational films that paved the way to get to where we are. I still love watching the 80s Back to the Future, even though Marty's car doesn't quite meet up to Sam's Bumblebee from Transformers. No one can say that Marty's wasn't the bomb in his day. Take a look at The Walking Dead from the 1930s and today's most watched TV show today. I think one of the main aims for cinema in this genre of science fiction is to amaze and put the audience in awe with the new conventions that impress and wow us. That's exactly the spirit George Melies had. Just doing the research that I have, I think he would have been the type of sweet old man that could busy talking to you about magic and film and wonder for hours without your ear ever wondering. He was an extraordinary, ordinary man that set so much more in motion than he ever knew. Or maybe he did.